Hey beautiful souls, welcome back to my channel. I'm here with my sis, Keyonia, and I'm doing, like I mentioned before, I'm doing a story weaving thing, and I always have this desire to sit with other women. I mean, we naturally do that anyway, sit with other women and talk and share stories and exchange, but my channel that's going to be a part of my channel. So my sis was in town and we were trying to record. It didn't happen, so we drove up to see her so we could sit and talk, and we vibed like since we first met like a few years ago, and she's just been key role in my life and has amazing and powerful story as well and lots of wisdom to share. And so I just want to highlight people, especially women in my life, Black women at that, who just are activists and movement shakers in our community and have a lot of light and love to share. So we're vibing out, sitting here talking, and we have a lot in common. You know, we all actually, as a human race, have mommy and daddy issues. And so, but we talk a lot about our mommy wounds. And so I thought it would be good to weave in how mommy wounds kind of impact our identity, how it impacts our self-esteem, how it impacts our sexuality as women with trauma, and just however that trauma shows up from our mothers. So I'm here with my sis, Keys. Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Like what?
Like who you are, what you do.
Okay.
You know, just some fun stuff.
Whatever. Okay.
Whatever.
So hi, I'm Keyonia. I am from Newark, New Jersey. I always love to say that, even though I haven't lived there in probably like 15, maybe even half my life. Anyway, that's my home. I'm always going to claim my home. But I've been on the West Coast forever now. But anyway, so I'm from Newark, New Jersey. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I specialize in Afrocentric mental health. I love working with my people, especially as it pertains to mental health. When I say mental health, I don't only mean like coming to the office once a week, every week to have therapy. That's one aspect of mental health. But what I mean is like really helping Black people in America, people of African descent, to understand the mental shackles that have been placed upon us, and to support Black folks in particular in like breaking the shackles of mental slavery. So that's what I mean when I say mental health, like really helping Black folks be mentally well, because every single thing starts with your mental. If you're not mentally well, you can have all the money in the world, all the success in the world, is just not going to work out because you're not mentally able to handle anything, good, bad, or indifferent. So that's a little bit about me, unless you want me to say something more. But that's who I am. Oh yeah, I'm a mom. I guess I'm still getting like accustomed to that part of my identity, because I was not a mom for so long, and I feel like I had like a lot of life and fullness before I became a mom. And I feel like folks that have children earlier in life, I imagine they wouldn't feel that way, but I don't know, maybe they would. But I feel like I've had so much of a life before I became a mom, so I'm still kind of getting acclimated to my momness or mommyhood, or however you want to say it. But
which we don't talk a lot about in our community, like that shift in identities when we go through huge transformations. That's never highlighted, like, and getting used to that is just like, oh, you have a child, you have to like, now I'm a mom, and you have to accept that identity, but nobody talks about that there is this kind of like shift, and that it cannot be, and that it's uncomfortable, and that it's okay to not be okay with changing into that identity. So
yeah, I feel like when we talk about motherhood, it's more normalized in the sense of like, oh, it's something that happens every day, and it's like, okay, yeah, but motherhood in itself is like a spiritual, like, it's not an experience that I feel is like of this world. It's like a very like out of this realm type of experience.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and I don't think we talk about motherhood like that. We make it seem like it's just this like
glamorized, like,
or
just,
even just like a flimsy, whimsical thing, and it's just like
no, it's more sacred and more deeply spiritual and a rites of passage.
Really
like,
sacred.
You're transitioning into your new role, your new life, your new identity, and that requires a death, like we talked about before. It requires a death of your old self, and so
which can be really like difficult in a lot of ways. Like, I think we don't talk about how incredibly painful it is becoming a mom, because it is such a beautiful experience. But two things can exist at the same time. So beauty and pain can exist at the same time. So I feel like that kind of describes my experience. It was like really, really amazing and beautiful and life-changing, but also really difficult because of a lot, like just kind of transitioning into like the mommy womb. I feel like women who experience motherhood that are specifically on a healing journey, it's different because I feel like having a child, like I think when this is what comes to my mind, Beyonce said like having Blue Ivy introduced her to herself, and I feel like everybody's like, oh, whatever, that's so cliche, or like folks didn't really understand that. And I feel like now that resonates with me because I feel like having my child introduce me to aspects and elements of myself that I would have never been able to be introduced to without her. And so and for me, how that translates into the mommy wound is that like I've always had mommy issues my whole life. Even though I grew up with my mom, we always like, I didn't like live with someone else and see her periodically. Like I lived with her, but because of all her trauma and how that showed up, there was always contention in our relationship. And so I feel like once I left home, I've always had a lot of resentment towards her, but I didn't know what that was or what I was feeling in my body while I was like in that and living with her. But once I left, I had so much resentment towards her for a number of things, like all the strictness, like the way she interacted with me, which was very aggressive and hostile. Granted, now that I'm aware because of her trauma, but that's how I experienced my mom. It wasn't like nurturing, loving, compassionate. I never experienced that from her. I guess there are elements and aspects, but that wasn't like my overall experience. When I think of my mom, like specifically, I don't think of like, it doesn't feel like warm and lovey-dovey, right? But when I think of mother and motherhood, like outside of my experience, I think of like, it should be like a warm, cuddly, like nurturing type of feeling, but that's not what I experienced. And so yeah, the resentment was there for like all my years of college. I had a lot of anger. I was very hostile myself, and I didn't really realize until later that that was all because of my like pent up energy and pain and resentment towards my mom, and it came out in me being like aggressive and hostile to other people. I mean, it didn't escalate to like, you know, a dangerous or criminal place, but it was, I definitely felt anger. Like for most of my 20s, I was just angry, and I didn't understand why. And so, you know, through my process of healing and, you know, seeking therapy and talking with friends and building different relationships where I could receive and give love and compassion, I was able to understand like, oh, all of this is connected to like my very first relationship with my mom. And so yeah, I just so fast forward to me becoming a mom, like I had a lot of like animosity and resentment towards my mom. And I think before becoming a mom, I started to like come to terms with that and realize how that animosity, resentment, and anger was like impacting me and my growth and my ability to like evolve and be a better person. So I started to work on that, work that out, and accept that my mom is who she is. She's never going to like be anyone different. I don't get to have like a do-over or, you know, closure or whatever we like as humans to like feel whole or something in that way. And so I feel like I started to like really heal. I would say like maybe 2 to 5 years before becoming a mom, I was like, you know, I really gotta like get this in check. And so I think I spent years like just being okay with it. So it's still sad, it's still hurtful, but getting to a place where it's not like I'm just carrying this anger because my mom wasn't what I feel like she should have been, right? And then also understanding, not making an excuse, but understanding like she didn't have the best childhood either, right? She didn't have the mom that I wanted her to be. She didn't have that either. So you can't give something that you didn't have, right?
Expect it, yeah.
Yeah. So, but it still wasn't, I always found myself being like, I want to be better around this stuff as it relates to my mom. Like there was this feeling, I can't even really describe it, but I always felt like I want to just be okay with this in a way that I don't feel like I'm okay with. So anyway, I feel like, and I never wanted children. Like I never wanted children, and I feel like a huge reason is because of my childhood experiences, my experiences with my mom, and even like positionality in society as a Black person. I was like, I don't want that experience for my child. So obviously that all shifted, but once I got pregnant, I feel like that was the first time in my whole entire life that I was able to have like compassion for my mom. I was never able to have, like, I had understanding, maybe some empathy, maybe some sympathy, but never like true like feelings of like compassion and like even sadness for her pain. So yeah, it was something, I don't know what it was about like being pregnant, but it wasn't like when my child got here. It was like my pregnancy, I actually wrote her a letter when I was pregnant, a long letter, because my mom always said that she felt like I hated her, and although I had a lot of resentment, I can't say that I've ever hated her. I don't feel like it's ever risen to that level of hate. Right. So I wrote her this long letter, maybe like 4 or 5 pages, about how like I feel, because she would always say I did the best that I could, and I would be like, whatever, that's bullshit. But it really, like, she really did. Right. She really, really did.
She only knew what she could.
Exactly.
She only had a certain level of understanding or knowledge in order to raise you because of how she was raised.
Exactly.
So it makes sense.
Right. And she didn't have, and I also feel like with our generation, and then I would like to hope that like we have something I feel like our parents did not have. Like we have this burning desire for more, to be more, to do more, to experience more, to not struggle, to just kind of like a liberation is what I call it, that our parents did not have the ability or the resource or whatever to tap into. So I feel like
interrupt you. That's that in astrology terms, we're the Pluto generation. All of us who incarnated at this time, that's our Pluto coming out of, that represents transformation and death, which is a rebirth of transformation and all of that stuff. So we are like the freedom fighters and liberating ourselves. And so we just, on a spiritual or cosmic level, that is our mission. So sorry, anyway.
No, you had to, because I think also for other people having this experience and not having like the words or the terminology to put it with, because sometimes we African people, we're spiritual people anyway.
Absolutely.
And a lot of us are not tapped into our power, and so that also is a huge part for me of mental health. It's like we always think of power as something that's outside of us, or like God, and God is power, but God is also within us. We are also God, right? And so like not leaning on others or things or situations outside of us. Like we have like an amazing power that we are not tapped into, and so
and we weren't taught it because it wasn't passed down. We to know, like we were taught to, like you said, put our inner resources outside and trust outside of ourselves, instead of being like having the teachings that it's all connected, and how to access it, and how to, and Flo also represents power too, by the way. So.
Yeah, like
so,
go like deep within. Everything is outside of us, and it's like no, everything that we need is already within us.
Absolutely.
But we're taught that we're broken, or we're sinful, we're this or that, and it's just like no. We're perfect. Actually, everything that we have is within us, and there's all this outside stuff actually keeps us from our power and keeps us from going within.
And learning how to use the outside stuff as tools to get to the inside
Absolutely.
stuff. It's anyway, but
so just kind of getting back to my motherhood journey of like getting pregnant, then that allowed me to like access compassion within me towards my mom. So I wrote her a letter letting her know that and what's interesting is before I got pregnant, my therapist had always been like encouraging me to write my mom a letter, even if I didn't send it to her, and I was always kind of on the fence about it. So when I got pregnant, I wrote the letter, and I basically outlined that like I loved her deeply, I never hated her, it's not even possible for me to hate her, and I feel bad that she felt that way, and despite like my experiences, I do feel that she did the best that she could, and I kind of outlined what that meant, because I was never really able to receive that when she said that. And so outlined that in the letter, and then I'm thinking the letter was so long, it's kind of like all jumbled up in my mind, but I also did let her know that, I have an incredible amount of pain from our relationship in the way that she raised me, in the way that she engaged with me, and that's just the reality, right? But I also did tell her, like, there were aspects, of course, that were positive. Like, she always encouraged me to, like, better myself as far as education, as far as, like, not depending on a man for resources, and just, there's some other thing, like self-respect in terms of like, basically sex. I feel like my mom had a lot of trauma when it comes to sex and like being, what's the word I'm looking for? Like being violated. And so I do feel like there was a strong element of like respecting your body and like having dominion over your body, and if you do something, it's because you want to do it, and like don't let a man trick you into like having sex with you, just kind of messages like that really kind of, I feel like those are the types of things that kind of protected me and saved me from making poor choices or experimenting in ways that could be harmful to me, in the future. So, there's some good with the bad, so to speak. So I wrote that letter. And needless to say, I was kind of disappointed at her response, but I also was trying to talk to myself about, like, this is not about your mom, this is more so about you. And so that act of writing the letter and sending it, like, shifted my whole, like, feeling, idea, thought process around my mommy womb. Granted, it's still there, but it definitely allowed it to take a shift in a way that it had not able to happen like in the past years, previous years. So that happened, and then I think that just giving birth and the journey, I think there were more painful aspects revealed because my mom didn't come. She she wasn't like a part of my birthing process. She wasn't a part of my like transition into motherhood. Like she wasn't, I don't feel spiritually or physically a part of it. And so that was hurtful.
Yeah.
And so I think that I had to, it was all lessons for me. Like there was still some expectation there that I hadn't let go. And really, that's kind of difficult, but that's where you have to be in order to get to that like real place of healing, like letting go of expectations. But that's difficult because who doesn't have expectations of their parents? Even as a grown up yourself, right. Like we still have expectations and thoughts and ideas and feelings of what should or shouldn't be. But that's our stuff, right? If people don't show up in the way that we feel like they should or shouldn't be, and that can't dictate like, you know, how we feel or navigate through life. So it's been incredibly painful. I do feel like I'm still in the process, because my child is 2.5 now, and I still feel like I'm in the process of unpacking and uncovering all the ways in which this mommy wound has really impacted me and still is impacting me. And I think that, yeah, it's pain. Like I feel like it's incredibly painful to go through this process without having the support of a mom on many levels, like having your mom, even just being there to be like, oh, when you were like this, or when you were that age, this is what I did, or this, you know, even if you feel like it was totally wrong, or you would never do it that way with your child, but just the ability to have that anyway. Like my dad came, and my dad, I have a pretty close relationship with my dad. Well, I won't minimize it. I feel like I'm really close with my dad, and he came. And he's not, I mean, him and my mom were not together when I was, you know, born. He was around though, but I think he has a different experience. He didn't really do the nurturing and all of that. But it was interesting because when he, through the different positions in which he's seen my baby grow up, he's been able to say like, oh, you know, he will like reflect on like how I was or what I did during that time, and he'll tell me. But I feel that it's different from a dad than the mom, you know?
Absolutely.
So it's been nice having that. But yeah, I mean,
and you spent more time with your mom, right? Like you were raised in her house, so
And you know, I've always had my dad and always been around him, but I lived with my mom, and I only see my dad like on the weekends or holidays and stuff. So
there's a huge missing piece of the story. Your stories as a child,
And even and I think my mom has such a tremendous amount of trauma that hasn't been released or unpacked. So, you know, trauma that's there with no attention, because we all have trauma, but some of us are tapped into it and how it is a barrier or not, right? And so my mom has so much trauma, and I know that she's not tapped into how it's manifesting itself in her life today, that like even when I ask her questions like about my childhood or things she did or didn't do, the answers are very like offensive, or like, because I'm the oldest and I have 3 other siblings, and so for example I'll be like, oh, did you do this with me? And she'll be like, no. And I'm like, oh, but you did that with my siblings? And she'll be like, oh yeah, I did. And I don't even think it's intentional, but it's just like, you can't make the connection that you just told me that you were just kind of like, oh, the hell with it with me, and then you did it with my siblings, and I'm like, you can't make the connection on how that might be helpful, or how you could have like packaged that in a different type of way, not lie, but be like, you know, I was much younger and I wasn't as mature, I was, you know, blah, blah, whatever, you know what I'm saying? At least this is how I'm playing it out in my mind. Yeah, when I had you, I was young, I didn't have a lot of information, I wasn't really tapped in, but then, you know, when I had your siblings, I kind of did it differently. I wish I had done that with you, you know, something. And I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't do that with you, but yeah, I did it with your siblings, and it's just like, okay. But anyway, so I'm just using that as an example. Like, I have to remind myself that like, it's not about me. It's really about the fact that she's just fucked up. Like, her trauma just got her really fucked up, and she's not even aware.
And I think with age, that comes like you realize, like you can make that connection or identify that separation. Like that's her stuff. It has nothing to do with me. It's not my fault. But when you're going through like your healing, or even before you go through your healing, you internalize that stuff like as it's yours, and then you have to spend so much time investing in unpacking and undoing that, and then you have to like kind of it's your responsibility to forgive and let go, and that kind of feels like a burden. Like, why should I have to? They're the adults, like, it's like a whole process, but it's very frustrating. So it's admirable when you can reach the point of, just like, okay, forgiveness in a sense, like just letting and detachment, kind of like detaching from that story, like, this is not mine, that's hers, so, but it takes work, a lot of work.
That it does. It's a process, because it's kind of like, and it ebbs and flows. Sometimes you're able to do it better than other times. Other times,
a lot. You're like, you're right back into that wound again, where you're like, oh, and you have to kind of go through the steps again to get yourself back into that empowered state. Yeah.
But it's really like, on a spiritual, on a scientific, on a like biological level, the relationship with the mom is just so intense and impactful. I feel like even while the baby is like, soaking in your amniotic fluids, it's the baby's body is already soaking up the feelings that the mom has towards it.
Yeah. And
so I'm even thinking about all of that, like, did my mom want me? And just like, we think that stuff doesn't matter, but it does. Like, for me, I wanted my daughter like so much, and I was like happy and excited, and I feel like that translates even into her personality today. And like, she's a very happy-go-lucky, like, free child. And so I feel like everything is all connected, and I think that we don't realize how connected things are. And I think even for a mom that might have experienced like a pregnancy where maybe they were uncertain, or they didn't want just like a lot of uncertainty. And then maybe when the baby was here, they were like, oh, absolutely, and excited. But like, your child's already sloped up the fact that you were uncertain about it. There was some ambivalence. And so we think that things are just not connected, but everything is so connected.
Absolutely. And to even deeper in that sense, our moms, the whole line, you are carrying in the eggs, whatever you're thinking, your thoughts, emotions, feelings, all of that you're saying, that extends back to your great, the primordial being for you to get through to this thing, because the cells, our cells and our eggs carry the DNA, the genetics, all those imprints that travel through each lineage of us being born until it gets to us, and then we're carrying on that same thing. But like you said, people don't make that connection, that's why it's our responsibility to change those narratives, to change the way we view pregnancy, to change the way we view motherhood, and starting with not even pregnancy, preconception.
Absolutely.
Making sure that you in a as optimal state as you can be before you even get pregnant. Like, I missed that note because I was young when I had Josh, so I was 18, so I obviously, and I was grieving because my mother had passed like a few months before I got pregnant. So I was grieving, I was a child still, I was like not conscious at all of like, impacting. I mean, I still had like teenage wounds of like self-esteem stuff, all of that stuff. And what do I see now? I see that stuff playing out in my son.
Yeah.
So luckily I did, and then I could track it back to like, oh, my mom's self-esteem. And then I could look at my grandma, her self-esteem, and all of those the self-doubt, the self-esteem issues, all of those, like, it's just, you can see it through your child, especially if you haven't changed within yourself first. So
and that's
it's biological, spiritual, it's physiological, all of that stuff, and people just focus on the physical
Exterior.
aspect, the exterior of pregnancy, and not how, and just motherhood in general, and just not how, like we're saying, just that it's all tied in and connected. Like you were more interested in like postpartum stuff as well, and including that in your work. Or
I just like the whole thing, because I just like it's because I've worked with moms all throughout my career, but I feel like it's so different now that I have the actual experience, right? And so just Black women specifically, just like you said, being intentional about, like, I just desire that we are more intentional about becoming moms, because maybe we would spend more time like not like being preventative.
Yes.
Because if we shed light on like a lot of things, if we shed light on like the true work of motherhood, it's like not something. I mean, to be honest, I have friends that I'm like, don't ask me if you're on the fence, because I'm going to tell you not to become a mom. And not because I don't enjoy it, not because it's not beautiful, but because it is by far the hardest thing I've had to do in life so far.
Absolutely.
The hardest thing, and I feel like it will remain that way.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like, so I would not advise it. But if folks have decided that that's what they want to do, I think
a conscious choice.
It should be a conscious choice. And I think that we should have more, of course, everybody's journey is different, everybody's experience is different, but we don't have conversations about the difficulties.
Yes.
The potential difficulties, because I know that there are some folks who might not experience postpartum, but for me, and I did a segment with a friend of mine that has a whole video series on like postpartum and pregnancy, Black motherhood, having a doula, et cetera, and I'll just reiterate, it's not even, it even goes beyond like socioeconomic status. So like, I feel like I had the resources, I had the education, I had everything. Like, so it wasn't a financial issue. I had a doula, I had a midwife. Yes,
I was
you.
her doula.
A midwife. I had everything. I had all the resources. There wasn't anything that I needed that I couldn't get to make my pregnancy and to make my whole experience like robust and abundant, right? And so I feel like that's not everyone's experience. So there's folks who are already starting off at a deficit. They don't. I've had even like, you know, good healthcare, which we all know that Black women have the worst birth outcomes, even the ones that have money. So it's like everything's already stacked up against you, even if you have everything that you think you're supposed to have outwardly. So I'm saying all that to say is I had all of that and I still got fucked up.
Yeah.
Postpartum kicked my ass. So I'm saying all that to say that people think like, I have a big fancy house, I have all the money, I have a husband. Yeah, and I had all that. A great supportive partner, financial resources, everything. And I was not prepared for the way in which postpartum shook me, right? Granted, a lot of that I feel was spiritually, spiritual. It was because of my mommy womb, all that. And I had you, and I had everything, I feel, and I still felt depleted.
And do you feel like it's the sole cause of it was the mommy womb issue, or just not being prepared? That's what I meant. Like not the preventative thing, or just, you know, like there's no way you could be prepared.
That's
for
what I
birth,
feel.
Motherhood. That's
what I feel. There's no
amount of teaching, no amount
preparation.
of books you can read. It's just,
which I did all of that. There's no. Luckily, my birth experience in itself was perfect. It was great, but there was the postpartum. To be honest, I do feel, because Curtis' mom, my mother-in-law, she did say, you're going to get postpartum. And I didn't say anything, but I was like, whatever, not everybody gets postpartum. And I was like, why would you even say that? I was thinking to myself, like, whatever kind of thing. But I feel like people don't talk about it enough. And maybe
So
there
you're
are some folks that don't
Sorry.
get it. Maybe there are some folks that don't, or maybe they experience it in a different way. Maybe they can't articulate it. What I know is that I got it, and I got it bad. And I don't know if it was so bad because I was expecting not to, or if I felt. And honestly, I do feel like spiritually and emotionally, I was in a good place before I became a mom. Like, just very intentional, meditating. I was like zen.
Yeah.
And then I feel like a lot of that kind of like dissipated as throughout my pregnancy. Like, I still was a very calm person, and I still was in my zen throughout my pregnancy. But for some reason, I feel like once I gave birth, all of that shit did not sustain me in postpartum. And I'm still feeling like I'm not all the way out of postpartum. So I just feel like there's no amount of preparation, and I feel like in combination with the spiritual piece and the hormonal piece, I don't know if you could ever be prepared, but I feel like conversations about the realness of it should be had, because I feel like it's better for someone to be prepared to expect something even if it doesn't happen than to be hit with something like a ton of bricks because you never thought it would happen because you thought you were so spiritually well or sound.
Yeah.
And so, but it's, since my experience, it's been very freeing to hear women who I feel are great moms who have their shit together, whatever that means, right?
Right.
Looking at shit out on the exterior.
Yeah.
But it feels affirming for women to be like, girl, I wasn't myself till my child was 5 or 6 or whatever. Or, oh yeah, that, like, just kind of normalizing, like, oh, what? Psh, that ain't nothing. I was fucked up. You know, just all kinds of stuff.
17, and you see me still going through murder. So, girl,
Yes.
it's important to be real and vulnerable, you know? But one thing you said that stuck out to me was the matriarch that you did have, Curtis's mom, who just said, you're gonna have postpartum, and that was it. And I think that's where the lack or the where the issue lies, is that we don't have any elders anymore that oversee. Like, okay, I'm a doula, I went to school for this, but that has nothing to do with it. I feel like we all need that, the elders of our village, you know, the mothers to sit with us, to be there with us, to help. Like, no, you stay in the house for that 6 to 8 weeks.
Right.
I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna be cooking for you. I'm
helping you nurse,
helping you nurse,
like nurturing you and the baby.
Yeah, and just like sit and talk with you, and just like that. We need the mother. The mother needs the mother. And I understand that doulas and midwives take on that role, but our biological, whoever's connected to that baby, genetically,
the village
is what's even more important, healing for us as women as we go through postpartum and stuff, and just identity shifts as a whole. Like, I feel like, before I go into segue into something else, but that one sentence of you're gonna have postpartum, and then she's speaking it on you. Another thing, the word you're gonna have postpartum, that's powerful in itself. You just casting out the negative, spell. That spell, you know, instead of being like, okay, I see, because she saw something in you, right? She's seen something.
I don't know if she saw something in me, or if she experienced it, so she just assumed everybody.
Yeah, either that, or either way, you know, you see it. You know, whether it was her experiences or yours, or she saw something in you that could potentially, that it could unfold in you, but okay, I see this in her. What can I do? You know, how can I help her transition into motherhood smoothly? What did I learn from my experience that, you know, that I can share with her? Like, there's not enough of that, and that needs to be a thing. Like, we need to make that a thing.
That's the village that we as Black African people don't have anymore. Like, I imagine that before our time, like even before our parents, our ancestors were all together. Like, everybody supported everybody. So, like, I imagine that having a baby was a completely different experience for a African woman than like American society. Like, we were all in the village, everyone rallied around, and so I imagine that the mom and the baby was taken care of in the way that they needed to, so that they were able to heal and grow, and like around health and love and compassion and being nurtured. And so we're we're in this society trying to thrive in ways that is not like conducive to. So
yeah,
it's intense.
Yeah, I think especially when you were saying, oh damn, I was trying to hold on to it, but it lost me. Something about dang, maybe it'll come back to me. I don't even know what I was gonna say.
Postpartum motherhood.
Shoot.
Village not having the support.
Damn. It's something in the beginning that you said something about, oh man, I don't know, maybe it wasn't meant to be said, whatever, I'm gonna let it go.
Well, it might come back.
Yeah, it'll, if it's meant to, it will. So you, is that what you think that was the missing link for you in your postpartum, was more having that matriarch or yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have that. And you were here. My best friend, my childhood best friend came for a week. And it's not like I had enough, but it just was not enough. I needed like a whole village. And I even had friends offer to come, but this was when I was pregnant, and you don't know what you don't know. So I had a few friends who had babies, and they were like, "Oh, we'll come," and they like take turns, and I was like, "Oh, no, it should be you." Like it was kind of like, I don't think that's necessary, but. And I've told them since, you should have insisted or just came anyway, because I know what the hell I'm talking about saying don't come.
You're have a strong personality, excuse me, more in tune with yourself, all of that. So when you say, no, I don't need it, people don't believe you. But instead of being like, no, sis, I need you, I'm gonna do this for you, or I think you need this, and kind of like override what you're saying.
Yeah,
because you might not be sound enough, especially in postpartum, to receive it because you think you have it together. All postpartum moms think, oh, I got this, especially if you're a Virgo, and she's a Virgo, just like me. You think you can just do it all and you don't need the help, but we really aren't in tune with what we really need. We don't know what we need
until we need it.
Yeah, until we need it. And so I think the matriarch of the family, that's her role too. Like that like, no, I think you need to sit down, or whatever the thing is. It's like taking control of that. And I think because we've been colonized to kind of like, the elders are kind of wiped out, and just that dynamic between having an elder and just the toxicity of our family relationships and ties anyway. It's just all jumbled up. Like there's no kind of order. We can't respect no order.
There's no order. Yeah. We're not in alignment with nature.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just all out of whack.
It's all out of whack.
But that was intentionally done to keep us like ununified, to keep us like
what
we're going through. Yeah. So
and confused and have no support, and then that shit just keeps generational, keeps playing out. But like we said, we're the shakers of these narratives. We're shaking shit up. We're changing that. We're and we're reclaiming our village. Like that's what we don't know what the hell we're doing, but we're figuring out through.
We know what the hell.
Oh my gosh, I keep spitting. Sorry.
We know what the hell ain't working. So
yeah, right. Like this don't feel right. This don't. So
it's just so many dynamics. I'm thinking about this video. I don't know why it's coming up in my mind, but. It was a family of, I can't remember if it was elephants or hippopotamus. It was a family of elephants. And it was a demonstration for the sake of like understanding how important family is and how everyone has a role and we need each other. Like everybody needs each other where, I don't need a man. It's like, yeah, you do.
Yeah, you do.
And not in the way you thinking, right? But it's like, so they had this, I think it was elephants. They had a family. It was like tons of elephants. And what they did was, generations and generations. So babies, uncles, aunts, cousins, mother's, fathers, etc. what they did was they took all the dads out. So they took out all the male elephants that were dads and like uncles and things like that. They took all those elephants out, and it was like while they were all there, everything was in order. They had an order, a way of how things went. Like everything was just kind of like on the screen. You're just watching it, and it's just like a flow of life. Yeah. Just everybody kind of doing their own thing. They took out all the dads, and in less than a 24-hour period, it was like a zoo.
Everybody just...
It was a zoo. They were fighting. It was like complete and total chaos. And I thought, first I was offended, because I'm like, we're not animals, but we are. But
right.
I was offended. I'm like, why are they using animals to illustrate this? But then my higher self was like, no, you need to think about this. This is really symbolic. So even in the animal kingdom, when there is no order,
right,
when there is a missing link, i.e. the dad, the male figure, and this could be anyone. It could have been the mom. It could have been, the elders. It could have been any element that is needed in a thriving family and village, right? You remove any element, there's automatically going to be chaos. Absolutely. Because everybody has a role. Everybody has a position to play. And if any one thing or person is removed, you're automatically out of alignment. And we don't see that as a people, because we have adopted this Eurocentric ideology of individualism and I don't need nobody and I'll do this shit on my own and all that. And it's just like, but we're out of alignment with our soul, because that's not what keeps us connected or keeps us in our power. And so yeah, here we are basically trying to pick up the pieces of the disaster that like has been created. Some of, not because of anything that we did, right? But because of
and how we're cleaning it up looks different for each of us. Like we're cleaning it up in different ways and expressing it in different ways. And I think there's so much work to be done when it, because I say that because so many people are not even aware that there's work to be done, that there's work that needs to be done. And so,
which is problematic too.
Right, is scary actually.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, but I feel like people like us, or there's tons of people out here who are creating awareness and living through our lives and our daily, expressions of, our daily lives. We are experiences. We are kind of shaking narratives up. We're shaking it up so we can build it back together. How do you think your mommy wound has impacted your sexuality?
Specifically, I think, that's wow. Where do I begin? I think that it's just so much coming. Like I'm flooded with so much right now, just as a result of that question. But I think that again, my mom, she has some pretty traumatic experiences as it relates to sexuality and sex. I know, but I think that she spent most of my childhood so she was sexually abused, and so that was a piece. So she was very much protective, if anybody touches you, you better let me know. And there was even she rarely left me for that to happen. But if on the off chance I was left with a relative or whatever, she would grill me after that, did they touch you, that kind of thing. And then she was just very hyper vigilant about sexual abuse, and so that came out that. I feel like that created anxiety within me around sexuality. I think that it's all interconnected, and luckily I never had that experience, at least not that I know of, because I do feel like I have some energy there, but I don't know if it's because of my mom and her hypervigilance, or if something really did happen, because there could be repressed memories, you know,
Yeah,
that stuff.
absolutely.
The body holds on to things that the mind doesn't remember.
Absolutely.
And so as far as I know, I have never had like any sexual abuse or anything like that. And so it started with that because she had issues around that, and then I feel like growing up, I kind of seen her like be with multiple partners like throughout the course of my life. Or she was married for a great portion, but then she had many partners. And I mean, of course, going through it, you don't know what's going on. But like as a grown up, you're like, oh, this is what was happening. And I asked my mom, I was like, do you feel like as I got older, I was like, do you feel like the sexual abuse that you experienced caused you to be more promiscuous sexually? And she said, yeah. And that was kind of the extent of it. But I just wanted to know if she was aware that it was connected and stuff like that. And so she's like, yeah, I do. And so I feel like the way that she raised me, and I say me because I'm the oldest, and I think she was different with my siblings, and I feel like they would say their experience is different than mine as well in terms of sexuality, experimentation, etc., etc. But she raised me in a way that was like, basically, don't ever have sex. Don't have sex. Don't experiment. Like it was more of like don't, and there was like teenage pregnancy was very common in my family, and so she was like, it was almost like a threat. Like if you get pregnant, I'm gonna disown you, right? If you have sex, and I feel like most kids would probably rebel, or that would make them want to be even more curious. But for me, I was actually afraid.
Yeah, scared.
So I was like, nah. So I didn't experiment or do anything sexually as a teenager, and so I never like experienced anything or experimented or right. It wasn't until my late teens. Basically, I ended up getting married, but so I never like experimented or with sexuality in my teenage years, and then all my 20s I was married, and even in that marriage I wasn't very open or free sexually, and I feel like because I still had that like don't do it kind of thing, and I feel like it still impacts me more, although I'm more open now and I'm more understanding, and I feel like teenagers and kids will be experimenting sexually. I mean, hopefully in a safe, mature way and with the collaboration of their parents, right? But I don't know that I feel like I'm still trying to break free of like, I kind of feel confined sexually. Like I have never been in a place to explore. And when I say explore, just like, what do I like? Like, what do I like? What do I dislike? You know, just normal stuff. I'm not talking about like anything like off the wall, but just even with a partner, because there was even like, you know, specific acts or things where my mom's like, don't ever do that to a man. It's disrespectful. It's degrading towards you. And it's just like, then you go into a relationship and you carry all of that, right? And that is not my belief. Like, I feel like in a sacred relationship with your partner, nothing is off limits unless you want it to be. Right. Whereas me, I kind of just have the message of like, don't do this because it's degrading, and it's just like, okay. So I feel like I have to unpack all of that. And so I actually don't really feel like I've ever like explored sexuality, blah, 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 all this for myself. I do feel like I'm like learning about it and understanding it better just because of my position as a supporter, as a healer, as a helper in the world. I feel like from that standpoint, I'm learning more about sexuality and the fluidity of it and how it is connected to our Africanness, which a lot of us don't know that. And so I'm definitely...
And what you're talking about specifically?
I'm talking about like gender. I'm talking about... So I'm talking about gender, I'm talking about queerness, and I'm talking about same-sex relationships and all the shit that we frown upon when that is our culture, and we don't know that because that is a part of our culture and always has been, and we don't know that because we don't know true history. And I'm speaking literally from a history standpoint because I've been doing my research because sexuality and gender and all that stuff has also been colonized.
Yes.
And we don't know that as Black people
because we've been programmed that it's a white people
exactly.
thing.
And I was one of them, so I'm not gonna sit up here and act like I'm judging. I was one of those people too. That was like, that's white people shit. And now I'm learning like, oh no, this was also something that they stole and et cetera, et cetera. But no, like we did not operate in that way. We were free and fluid and open, and I think that doesn't mean that heterosexuality didn't exist or wasn't a thing. Obviously, we're here. We procreate with each other. But sexuality, in the way that we see it in this country, is not how we operated from an African way. And so I am learning and exploring more from a like professional and personal standpoint, but for me, I still feel like there's more I need to tap into there. But like in terms of working with folks and supporting folks for me, my goal is that the African mind is liberated. Yes. And so that doesn't mean just financially, just like in your career, passion. No, liberated in every aspect. If you like, even sexually liberated, and like if you feel a certain way in your body, and you feel that you are supposed to be with women or you're supposed to be with everybody, to be able to embrace that, because being able to be liberated is being able to show up as your true authentic self, and that means to honor the desires of your heart. And obviously not if it's going to be harmful to yourself or to others, but a lot of times we're not able to honor our desires, and that's liberation. We don't see it that way. We live in a society where we have to deny, or you don't do that, you don't say that, you don't be this way, you don't be that way, and it's just like,
and Black people can't be no way.
Exactly.
And I feel like queerness and just sexuality in general is just another pathway into learning more about yourself. Like, so you
another way for liberation.
Yes, to freedom. And so you're learning about yourself. You're learning about, just I feel like you're learning about culture and all of that through your experiences with experimenting with sexuality. And I feel like Black people kind of, because of the programming and all of that, like they freak out, and which makes it, then there's all the judgment and blah blah blah. Then the religious aspect thrown on top of that. So it's like it's condemned and whatnot, instead of it being like I think about how our ancestors, or how in the past, like how they handled when a family member or someone in the village did come out, or actually. Read The Spirit of Intimacy by Sabanfu Soma, where she talks, she's from a bit. Do you? I love that book. But damn, now I just lost my train of thought. But how I feel they knew, African people know your purpose when you are born. Like, you're just like, this is who you are. They know who you are because they're spiritually connected, they're spiritually in tune. It's dimensions to this shit. So they already know that this soul coming in, they actually call the soul in, and that is birthed through the woman and they know your role. And so for people who are gay or homosexual or queer, whatever, they are recognized as gatekeepers in the village. They are, because queer people or queer folks, whatever, are the ones who were kind of seen like the healers of heterosexual relationships. Like they were, because you embody it, they call it two-spirited in like Native American and whatnot, but you're able, because you have, well, everybody has masculine and feminine energy in them, but queer people are more tapped into their two-spirited self, their masculine and feminine self. So they were able to, because they know they resonate so deeply with their masculine side, they resonate so deeply with their feminine side. So they're able to, when a man and a woman are together, this is the feminine and this is the masculine. So you're able to see the flaws that are happening in the relationship, and you as the queer person or the gatekeeper are able to kind of heal the dynamics that the masculine and feminine are battling with and help bring them closer together. So it's more about love.
It's more about village. Everything goes back to the village. Everyone has a role to play.
Yes.
And
so
we're
it's very deep,
alignment.
and we haven't even scratched the surface. We haven't even gotten there yet because we're so brainwashed and programmed to hate. And we can't even, our generation is just learning this stuff now as it pertains to Black. I think Native Americans and Native people, they're really there. I haven't been in like reservations and all of that stuff, but I know that they honor that, like they know that stuff. But as far as African people and African centered, like, we are so far removed from it, we don't even know the things. So we're like just learning all of this knowledge and whatnot. And so
you speak of Native Americans, we're connected. Like
absolutely, that's a whole other story.
Well. Yeah, like we're all connected.
The indigenous people, But as far as like cultural practices and you know, because we all have different rituals and how the rituals are expressed and all of that stuff. It's like their knowledge and wisdom is preserved. Black people, we are so disconnected from our rituals, and that is and ritual is everything. That is what, going back to the postpartum and motherhood and all of that stuff, because we don't have the rituals anymore, that's where all these negative birth outcomes come from. That's where like the trauma and postpartum come from. That's where the dynamics in our relationships are fucked up, but because the ritual is gone. We don't have rituals and practices anymore because I wouldn't even say they're lost. They were killed off.
Yeah, exactly.
We're tapping deep within ourselves and recreating them. And because stories are in our bodies, DNA, those stories are in our cells and our DNA. And so we are accessing parts of ourselves when we heal. And that's why it's so important for us to be healing, because we will retain the information and wisdom. And I know that from my own personal journey, just stuff coming back, So,
because our ancestors are not dead. They're here. Their souls are here with us. And so if we're so fucked up, we won't be able to sift through all the mess to access that. That's within us. Absolutely. That's there, right? And we have access to it freely and unlimitedly, but we just are we just got so much distraction, so much blockage. So and I think that's what it's in us, so we are healing so that we can access that power.
Absolutely. Yes, and start changing these narratives and recreating our villages and all of that stuff. And so I think it's super important that we have conversations like this, especially because, this is just the beginning. This is just like baby shit. Like,
this is not even scratching the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we have so much work to do. But I am very excited and I'm very happy that every one of us, well, not every one of us, but the people who I'm connected with on a friendship level, are on the same wavelength as me and have that desire and power, and that I'm attracting more people who have the same beliefs and values and want to go after our healing. Like, we're going after it. We're like, we want to be whole. We want to be right. And we don't judge each other's processes, and we, show up for each other as much as we can in it, and it's a beautiful thing. So I'm super excited,
me too,
about what will come, our children, I told her the other day, like, I'm kind of sad that, how do I say this? I am grateful for, it's black and white. There's always polarity. It's pain and pleasure at the same time that I had my son when I did. Like, I see the beauty of it, but also I do get sad. I grieve a little bit that I wasn't where I am now mentally, emotionally, and as empowered as I am now when I gave birth to my son, with the awareness that I have now, because man, I wouldn't have to, I shouldn't say I wouldn't have to, but it would just be a totally different experience.
Yeah,
and as a mother, like,
I think, because when you said 18, I think, damn,
right.
if I had a child, man, just with my processes, because I would have been who I was.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I don't know, maybe not, but
Yeah.
just thinking about who I was in my early teens and early 20s.
Yeah.
Man, I'm just like, woo, would that child have had a
And I
chance?
see the things, like all the things that I struggle with, not all of them, but the things that I'm transforming within me and transmuting within me, like self-esteem stuff and confidence and those, particularly those things, like I see playing out in my son or have, but you know, he's made tons of strides because I'm aware now and I'm able to get on top of that. Like, I see that shit and we gonna handle it. You know, like I'm making sure he's tapped into his emotions and all of the stuff that like I was cut off from my emotions. I was, you know, like that's a whole other story. But I see that like he doesn't want to express himself. He doesn't. I'm like, no, bro. Like we're about what's going on with you, how you feel. You know, like really into help him tap into his inner depth. And so I am happy that I'm able that I started my journey when I did, so that I can show up for him and it not could be a continuous lineage thing that is getting passed down. You know,
course.
So I think where my mommy wounds come in with that is a huge impact of where my mommy wounds were. But I don't want to make this about me essentially because I wanted to focus on you. But is that's one of the things, like my mom dying when, or transitioning I should say, when I was that age, because like the stories get lost. Like when I needed my parent, like that mother figure, with raising my own child, like asking the questions, like how did you handle this, or how would it, when I go to my grandmother, she just doesn't remember. So it's just like that's a lost cause. So it's like painful to, you know, not be able to make those connections.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
I think that every time I think about you, I think about like just this notion of like the loss of a mom, but one that has transitioned versus one that's still alive. I feel like that's an interesting parallel.
That is
because
the same.
Because I have a few friends that have lost their mom, and when they describe the experience, I feel like it's the same.
It is,
but my mom's here.
Yeah, it's a death. When you don't have your mom, they neglect you, or some kids, their moms just drop off the face of the earth. It's a death. It's a loss. It's the same thing. We struggle with the same issues, you know, the core issues. So
it's really, it really makes me think like it's intense.
It's super intense. Okay, so yeah, let's wrap it up. We could be here all day,
literally,
and we have, you know, like long ass conversations and deep, but that's friendship, right? When you meet somebody, you just like,
it's part of healing too.
It's definitely
very healing.
So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. Like, so Keyonia has her own business as well, mental health.
Yeah, I do mental
stuff.
health consulting, and so you can find me at healingblacksouls.org. And my email is, and I'm sure you'll drop it, but Keyonia at healingblacksouls.org. That's how you can find me. Shoot me a email or message if you want to connect or collab.
Yes. And comment below. Like, I want this to strike up. I'm sure it will strike a something within you, like for you to kind of reflect on yourself and your journey with your own mom or mommy wounds or whatever that is, however that looks like for you. So comment below what resonates with you, how your mommy wounds impacted your identity, how your mommy wounds impacted your sexuality, or just in general. Let's get this conversation started. And I will see you guys next time. Love and blessings to you. Peace. Okay, y'all, so I almost forgot. Not all about talk, about solutions too. So I want to ask Miss Keys what she is doing to heal her mommy wounds. What is helping you with your mommy wounds?
Therapy. Lots of crying.
Yes.
Lots and lots of crying. Self-reflecting, journaling, really thinking about how I feel, staying present, thinking about how I feel in my body, and also being in tune with how I react and respond to my daughter specifically, and even with her dad, my partner, how I act and respond to him. Those things are causing me to go within, and it's making me realize that everything is connected to my mom, the source of my first relationship. So just lots of self-reflecting, journaling. I'm in therapy, lots of healing conversations with friends and family members about the specific womb, and just being able to talk freely about being a mom, being a partner, having a family, like trying to have an intact family, and how like unprepared or ill-equipped, because it just seems like everything is centered around the mommy womb. And I feel like I knew that before, but I'm actually experiencing it like now. And so honestly, really just trying to stay centered, trying to stay present, and checking in with myself, and making sure I pour in when I feel depleted or I feel like emotionally spent the fuck out. And then taking time for myself, reflecting alone with myself, kind of outside of being a mom or being a partner or being a friend. Like, I need to take time to pour into me alone. So,
is there one tool in particular, one thing you're doing that has been the most effective, or is it all of it just together?
To be honest, the most effective thing for me has been being open with people that I'm close with. It's I kind of feel like I am the person that people perceive as like having it together. What I mean by that is like, given my experiences, like how I grew up, and like the lack of like having an intact family, and like growing up in the inner city with limited resources. I think that because I'm so like successful in a sense, people see me as like having it all together. And so for me, it's been particularly healing to be able to like engage with my friends or family that's like, oh, so how's it going, right? Because it's how's it going is coming from a place of like, oh, you have a baby now, you have a family, you have a career, you have a business. And it's been extremely healing for me to be like, I'm fucked up.
Right.
I'm
so
fucked
being
up.
Acknowledging it.
Yes. Like being vulnerable and being honest about my emotional state at that time, and being like, yeah, I'm fucked up because I am momming and I don't have a mom to go through this process with me, and it's fucking me up, and I'm fucked up, and it's making me sad, and it is impacting me more than I ever imagined. Despite that, I'm okay, but I am fucked up. And so I feel like being able to express that, and also there's the element of me being true to myself too, like speaking it out to others.
Absolutely.
Being like, oh yeah, like when I met with you a few months ago, and you're like, so how's it going? And I just broke down. And also allowing, because I feel like over the years I've been so conscious of like, no, you better not cry, and just being like, oh, I'm okay. And then it's something healing for me to just fall apart with people, because I don't do that. Like people do that with me, but I don't do that. And so being able to completely fall apart is healing for me.
Beautiful.
I would say that specifically.
I agree. That's beautiful. But yes. Thank you for sharing that. Why am I talking to camera? Thank you for sharing that, because people need to hear that, normalize the emotional process, that we ebb and flow, wax and wane, all of that, and that we are allowed and have permission to go to our depths and feel our emotions and be okay with not being okay. And we need to hear that more, especially from women who look like us, and that you can acknowledge and say, I'm fucked up.
And I think that also allows us to, because we need mothering.
Yes.
Whether we understand that, because I think so many of us haven't had that. Like, oh, I don't need that. No, we need that. That's why we're fucked up, because we need it and we haven't received it. And so I feel like me being vulnerable allows me to receive that mothering from my friends and from my family. And mothering doesn't have to come from an elder. I mean, it's nice, but our friends, especially those of us who are intentional about the friends and the people that we surround ourselves with, those friends serve purposes for us. And so there are times where my friends mother me, where I mother my friends, or whatever role that we're lacking, that compassion, the nurturing, that's how our friends show up for us. And so I feel like that has been allowing me to get what I need from my friends.
Yes. And I remembered what I forgot. And when I was in my health coaching certification, one of the courses in that certification was, I forgot who was talking, but they said the number one public health issue is parenting in our world, and why our world is so messed up. And that resonated with me so deeply, because when we don't have the mother or father figure in, or just if it's just jacked up or toxic or whatever, it impacts our whole society. Like everything starts with the parents, and parenthood. So, attacking it and get into it with allowing ourselves to feel, because a lot of us were not able to express ourselves emotionally with our parents and be real and vulnerable and all of that. So to be able to do this with friends or whoever is showing up as the parent figure, the mother figure, is deeply healing. So this is why I wanted to showcase solutions, because it's super important. You can see how different people are healing, and that it's okay to just, that crying and just expressing yourself and being real is healing too, and it's okay for us to do that as Black women. So yay. Thank you for sharing. Yay. We until next time, for real, goodbye y'all.